Hello, and today I'm going to be taking you through the second advanced web layer that has been created by us at Bloomreach. And this one is focused not just around acquisition, but also around zero-party data capture. So being able to ask a few more questions about customers, being able to still gather consent from them if you want to, but being able to have a bit more freedom with what you want to ask your customers. This is done using a very similar base to the previous advanced acquisition web layer. So this video does take a small understanding that you are aware of how that web layer works and you have used that web layer, but I will still be going over all the base concepts. So regarding the web layer, as you can see here, we have a similar set of categories that you would have seen in the other web layer. So this web layer does have all of the same layout, styling, and design functionality that the previous web layer did have. So most of this should seem familiar to you. We have the setup, which contains things like the sign-up source, which is included in your events. We have any consent categories you would like to set, such as email, and also any information on how you're going to be doing the consent management, whether you'll be creating a scenario off the back of the banner event coming through to do that, or whether you will be triggering that via the public API. Also asking whether you want to update customer attributes, so all these questions that people answer, whether you want to have those set as customer attributes against the customer too. You also have a new option here, which is to include the acquisition capture as a final step. So if I go through this quiz, answer my questions, this is the data capture as the final step. If I don't want that, I can skip it. And then as soon as I, as a customer, get through the questions, it will then just go straight to the thank you page. We can choose, if we have yes enabled here, what we want to do with the IDs. So do we want to identify the customer and what ID we're identifying against, and also which input that value will come from. So if we're updating the email ID, we will want to use the email input to update that value. I'll come back to question parameters and answer button styling shortly, but we then have information around similar familiar concepts like the form contents, where you can turn on and off all the different kinds of items in the form, like the email, the phone, and also set the country codes. All the familiar items around the layout, so where do we want this to sit within the page? We can change all of that in here as we are familiar with. We can change the layout as well, the same options you'd see, such as imagery, if you want to include it, where that image should sit, whether it should be on mobile and on the thank you page, as well as the offsets that we're familiar with and mobile widths as well. We have the familiar backgrounds if you want the overlay color to cover the rest of the website. If we want to have a specific background color, it's all accessible here, as well as our triggering rules for on entry, on exit, and on scroll. Copywriting, so all the text you see on the web layer is editable, as well as all of the styling of that text in the typography too. There is then form styling that allows you to customize your submit button and any inputs that you have within there, as well as the close icon too. So a few less things in the advanced here because all the extra zero-party data is done in the question parameters further up. But as normal, you can apply a voucher code, you can apply that copy icon, and you can also daisy chain these together as well. So you can, instead of showing the thank you page, trigger a next web layer, which is very useful if you want to skip that acquisition stage and take them onto a new journey, then you can do that. So that's a quick overview of all of the existing parameters that you will be used to from using the advanced web layer. However, there's two new categories with this one. The first one is the questions parameters. Now this looks a bit scary, but it's dead easy to do. I've made it as simple as possible to add these questions in. And the first one is the questions from the Google Docs parameter. Now this is where I'll bring you to my second tab, which is a Google Doc that you will have access to help create that matrix of questions. You can see in this Google Doc, we have two main areas. We have the required columns on the left-hand side and then optional columns on the right-hand side. You have to include the required columns, but you don't have to add these optional columns in if you don't want to. The first column is the order of the questions. This just gives an index against each of the questions, so we know which one's which. By default, they will display in this order of the questions as well. We then have the question. Now, for each answer in column E, we will duplicate these 3 columns, including the question 3 times, as well as the question type. This is just necessary so that we can make sure that we group all of these answers into one question, so we know they're all answers to the same thing. So you put the free text in of what your question is, and then also whether that specific question is required. You'll notice that that required tick can be set on each question individually. So you can see our second question, what is your first name, is not required, whereas what's your date of birth is. We then have the question type. Now this can be either a selection, which allows you to pick from multiple answers. You can have a free text input, which we have here, or you can have a date input. If you would like something similar to a dropdown, that would be the selection option. But if a dropdown is desired, please let your CSM know, and we can add that into a future version. You can see then for the answer, we have a different answer value for each of the selection types. You'll notice that I have not set a type on these ones down here. The default will be selection. So if you do not select one, it will use selection. However, for text and date, I have not put answer text because there is no text to add to it. It will just be an input there that you can add in. The optional columns then allows you to add an image that will sort of be reflected in the answer. As you can see when we go back to the Weblayer, you'll see what that looks like. And you can also set in column G which question this answer should lead to next. And this relates to those question order indexes in the first column. So I can prove that to you now. So you can see for what's your skin type, we have 3 different answers. One goes to question 2, which is what's your first name. One goes to question 3, which is what's your date of birth. And one goes to question 4, which is the rating. What I will do is I will copy and paste directly from this Google Doc into the Weblayer. So all I'm going to do is I can click on question order. I'm just going to click and drag across all of these columns that I want to include, whether that's just the required ones or any of the optional ones that I want to use. And I'm just going to copy it. Simple as that. In the Weblayer, within this questions from Google Docs input, I'm just going to delete what's in there and I'm going to paste it in. The code deals with what is put in there that looks pretty unreadable and a bit of gobbledygook, and it turns that into a format that it can use to generate the questions. And then you can see how the answer image is reflected. You can see I've just got a placeholder image here for these 3. But if I choose combination, which we know based on our question order is going to go to answer 4, and click continue, that takes us straight to the rating. We can then choose those ratings if we want to, and then click continue. You'll notice we also have the option for multiple choice. That is down here where you can choose to allow multiple choice answers or not. If I click false, you can see that I can only ever choose one of any of these. One of the inputs is how do you want your questions to display? Now you can choose to have them 1 per page like we have set here, or you can choose to have them all on 1 page. The key difference here is that the all on 1 page does remove the functionality of the order change. So there is no next step to choose which answer you will go to. If I just zoom out ever so slightly, you can see that there is that question button there. You'll notice that I have a couple of required questions here, which I've not selected, so the continue button is grayed out. I need to make sure that I select both of those required questions before that continue button is usable. There's also the option here for are all answers required to continue? For this, I can click true, and what that means is even if I have a few required questions, I still would have to answer all the different questions before that continue is clickable. In the next dropdown, you can choose how these answer buttons should display. Some things like the text color, if you would like to change that. We can change the button background color and make that a hideous little blue if we want to. That is fully transparent at the moment, so you can change that if you'd like, as well as things like the border width. Again, another garish color. So we'll make that a horrific 5 pixel wide border. So you can see we have all these styling options, and that really hurts my eyes. In terms of the width of these, you can change the answer button image width here. So if you wanted those to be a little bit smaller, you could change that to 40, and you can see that will make them a little bit smaller on the page, and you can use this just to tweak and change and find a size that fits you. The boxes are responsive to the size of the text within them. I need to change these back. There we go. So you have a lot of tweaking that you can do if you want to change how spaced out the answers are, for example, as well as changing things like the button spacing themselves. You can move them closer together and things like that to really customize the look and feel of this. So as mentioned, it's all driven based on these question parameters that are done in the Google Doc. You just fill this document out nice and simply. You then copy and paste that into this question input, paste your answer, your Google Doc into there, and that will generate the questions on the fly. You can see if I only copy question 1 and paste that in, then we will only have 1 question on here before we can then submit our data, add in our information, and click submit. That's not a valid phone number. Before we go to the thank you page. So please feel free to try this out. Do get in touch with the CSM with any feedback you have, how you get on with it. But hopefully it should be able to match quite a few use cases that you've got for zero-party data capture. Off the back of this, you get 1 event sent through to your to the project with Off the back of this, you get 1 event sent into your project with an action of survey response, and you get 1 event per question so that each answer has a specific event against it. You can then use that to access that data from the event by aggregate to get out the data, or you can access the customer attributes that it will update to get the data in from that as well.